All right. Let's dive into some seriously cool intel on body language today.
We're talking projecting confidence.
Reading those unspoken signals.
And hey, maybe even gaining a little influence along the way, right?
Absolutely.
And get this, our source material.
Reads like a how-to guide,
Okay.
which I think makes it even more fascinating to unpack, you know?
Yeah. It's like having that backstage pass.
So the human subconscious.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they jump right into it with this whole idea.
That our legs
Or like a giant neon sign.
broadcasting our inner state.
Right.
Apparently legs don't lie when it comes to confidence.
Yeah. It goes back to that primal instinctive territory.
I mean, think about animals in the wild, right?
Right.
They use posture to signal dominance.
And leg positioning is a huge part of that. We humans may have, we've traded in our tails for tailored suits.
But those subconscious signals still hold a surprising amount of power.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
And the source specifically points out
How the distance between someone's legs.
can be a dead giveaway.
Yeah.
The wider the stance, the more confident they are.
They even use police officers as an example.
How they often stand with their legs apart.
Right. And it's not just about looking authoritative.
Think about it.
Okay.
That wider stance
Yeah.
also prepares them for action.
It's about being ready to react if needed.
Now, you might not be facing down, a high-stakes situation every day,
Sure.
but imagine yourself walking into, like, say, a networking event.
Standing with your feet shorter width apart. It not only projects confidence,
It actually helps you embody it. You're literally taking up more space.
and that sends a powerful message, even if it's on a subconscious level.
Whoa, I never even thought about it like that.
And speaking of power moves,
The source also talks about approaching people at an angle.
especially in situations that could get a little, shall we say,
Heated?
yeah,
Why is that so effective?
because it taps into that same primal instinct we were just talking about.
Coming in head on.
Uh-huh.
That can feel confrontational, even aggressive.
But by approaching at an angle,
They're subtly diffusing that tension.
okay.
It's like you're saying, hey, I'm here to engage, not to challenge.
And this ties back to the source's point about avoiding aggressive postures in general.
Which can escalate a situation unnecessarily.
Okay, get ready for this because the source dives into some fascinating territory here.
How men and women apparently walk differently to project attractiveness or confidence.
Oh, it's one of those things, right? You really have to appreciate the nuances.
I mean, we don't want to fall into that trap of overgeneralizing
Right.
or reducing complex behaviors down to, like simple stereotypes.
Right. But there's no denying that.
Certain movements and postures have evolutionary roots, right?
Okay.
And can send powerful signals.
Even if we're not always consciously aware of them.
Totally. And the source specifically points out how men will often sway their shoulders.
When they walk, not their hips.
Right.
To project that alpha confidence.
It seems like such a small detail.
But they're saying it makes a huge difference.
It's all about how we occupy space.
Right, command attention.
Okay.
Think about someone like James Bond.
That classic swagger.
Yeah.
It's not just about good looks.
Right.
Right? It's that subtle shoulder roll that says,
I own this room.
and the cool part is,
Things can be learned.
and practiced.
Okay.
It's like mastering the subliminal language of confidence.
I love that. Now let's talk about sitting down on the job.
Or maybe I should say, the subtle signals we send when we're off our feet.
Right.
The source goes into a surprising amount of detail about posture while seated.
Especially that whole legs wide versus legs closed thing.
It all circles back to that primal instinct.
Of claiming territory.
Okay.
Even if it's just, a few square feet on a park bench, right?
Right.
When we spread out, we take up more space.
And that can be interpreted as a sign of comfort, even dominance.
Especially for men. But
It's also fascinating, right, how much
cultural norms and individual experiences play into this.
some people are just naturally more comfortable.
Claiming space than others.
So true. Context is everything.
Right.
The source also mentioned something that I thought was really insightful.
How people will sometimes shift their posture ever so slightly when someone new enters the room. Like, they didn't even realize they were doing it, but it speaks volumes about the power dynamics at play.
Oh, absolutely. Those micro movements.
Like a secret language, and once you start noticing them...
You'll be amazed by what you can pick up.
Right.
Did their shoulders stiffen?
Did they angle their body away slightly?
Or maybe they leaned in.
Right.
That's a classic sign of interest or engagement.
It's like their body is betraying their true feelings.
Even if they're trying to keep a poker face.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
And the source actually connects this to the idea of identifying social hierarchies.
They say to pay attention to whose arrival seems to trigger.
The most subconscious shifts in posture around the room.
Right.
That's usually a good indicator of who holds the unspoken power in that setting.
Exactly. It's like they're the sun and everyone else is subtly repositioning themselves in their orbit.
Hmm. Okay, this next one really threw me for a loop.
The source talks about men locking their ankles while sitting.
And how it can actually be seen as attractive.
Uh-huh.
But then they go on to say that it can also be a sign of discomfort.
Depending on the context.
Right.
Help me out here.
How can one posture mean two completely different things?
Well, it's a perfect example, right, of how body language
Is rarely black and white.
Right.
It's all about,
reading the subtle cues in context.
Okay,
Here's how I see it.
that initial ankle lock, especially when a man is first sitting down,
Can project a sense of confidence.
of being at ease, right?
Okay.
But as the conversation progresses,
Pay close attention to any shifts, right?
okay,
If he starts to feel uncertain or uncomfortable,
that ankle lock might intensify,
almost like he's grounding himself.
trying to regain a sense of control.
Hmm.
It's like a subconscious tell.
That reveals a change in his internal state.
So it's not just about the ankle lock itself.
But whether it intensifies or changes as the interaction goes on.
Exactly.
And the source does say that facial expressions are key here.
A bored expression versus a troubled one, those are two very different vibes.
Absolutely. And this is where
You can really start to,
fine-tune your own powers of observation,
okay.
right? Pay attention to those micro-expressions.
The almost imperceptible tightening of the jaw,
Right.
the furrowing of the brows, are like tiny cracks.
In a person's carefully constructed facade.
Wow.
And once you learn to spot them.
You can use that knowledge, right,
Okay.
to navigate the situation with more empathy and understanding.
Maybe it's, offering a well-timed word of support.
Or maybe it's simply giving them a bit of space,
Wow, it's like learning to read minds.
but with body language.
Right.
And speaking of subtle cues,
The source ends by talking about a posture we often see in teenagers.
that classic knee hug,
Ah.
the universal sign of needing a little reassurance.
It's a self-soothing gesture, right?
Ex-
Creating a sense of physical security when someone is feeling vulnerable or unsure of themselves.
And it actually ties back to something we were discussing earlier.
The power of nonverbal communication to build trust.
Right.
Imagine seeing, a teenager,
Curled up in that knee-hugging position.
sometimes just offering a warm smile or a kind word,
Can speak volumes.
letting them know they're not alone.
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive.
So to bring it all home,
What are some key takeaways our listeners can walk away with today?
well, I think the biggest one is,
To be more mindful of our own body language.
okay,
How we carry ourselves sends a powerful message to the world.
whether we realize it or not.
Right.
And of course,
Learning to decipher the subtle cues of others.
can unlock a whole new level of understanding and connection.
Just remember,
It's a lifelong practice.
the more you pay attention.
The more you'll pick up on those subtle tells that reveal what's really going on beneath the surface.
Absolutely. It's like
Yeah.
gaining a superpower.
The ability to read between the lines of human interaction.
So next time you're out in the world,
Keep your eyes peeled.
your mind open.
You never know what hidden messages you might uncover.